Welcome back to the Kids Hair Academy training video. Clipper cut with a disconnected fringe area. So what I'm doing here is I'm starting with wetting down the top so I can section out the top properly. We are going to leave as much length as possible up here. So we've just wet that down. Now we're going to section out the horseshoe. I've gone a little bit high above his parietal ridge because I want a nice high taper with my look. So I've sectioned out the hair to the crown. Now we're starting with our 2 guard, and that's going to be attached to the wall peanut. We always use to scoop the hands. It's a scooping motion with our clippers, and with this particular haircut, I'm using my comb as a guide just so that I maintain the weight in the exact area that I want it. I don't want to cut his hair too high and have the disconnection too obvious. So I'm leaving a little bit of length around the sides just below the ridge where the head curves, and I'm just using my comb here in order to kind of give me a loose guide, and it helps control the hair a lot easier too. And remember, with children, they tend to move their head a lot, so the comb is a safeguard so that you don't make any mistakes with sudden head movements. So with a clipper, you want to take notice of the hair growth pattern. So for the best and the closest clipper look, you want to make sure you're going in the opposite direction of the hair growth. And again, around the side here, I like to always make sure I'm pulling the weight out and pulling my clippers away from that line where I want to build the weight. You can see I've kind of gone in and left it a little bit uneven here around the top, and that's okay because I've left so much length that I'm going to clean all that up with my clipper over comb technique. Right now we're just trying to be quite as efficient as possible with our clippers, as children tend to move. I've got a pretty good model, but they don't sit still for long, and the combination of the clippers and the comb really help to get the process quick and finished efficiently. A lot of the cleaning up I do with my haircut is done with scissor over comb or clipper over comb. It's a technique which I've gone over in the previous video, and you can see how these techniques are applied into one haircut in a creative way. Now I'm just finishing the opposite side here. We're making sure we get all those little fine hairs around the hairline, around the sideburns, around the ear. However, I am going in with a shorter guard, or 1 guard, or I will do a clipper over comb at the bottom around the hairline to clean up that. But first, we always deal with the weight line and making sure the sides are perfect. I'm using my 2 guard comb. It's a cutting comb. It's versatile. I use it for scissor over comb as well. Here we're using it for clipper over comb technique, so you can see how that works and how much faster it is than using your scissor over comb. However, when you're using the clippers, there is a easier level of making a mistake because the clippers are turned on. So always keep that comb against the head so that you don't make any slip-ups, or if they make any sudden head movements, you end up cutting a little line in that beautiful fade you've just done. So when I do my clipper over comb here on the side, I'm just always making sure I bring my hand up and away from the area where I want the length to stay. So that's all a creative choice that you make in the beginning. Sometimes you can go a little higher. That means it'll be shorter and more disconnected. I want it a little softer in the disconnection, so I'm leaving more length on the side so that the sides and the top have a little bit of blending, but the haircut still is cut separately from the top. That ensures the most length being left. So now we're working around the crown, and around the crown we always make sure to leave the hair with no tension, or cut with no tension rather, and the hair pretty long. I like to do this because that ensures that I don't have any jumping hairs from that, any hair growth pattern. With my scissor over comb, I always make sure I bring the comb away from the area that I need that length to stay. So I comb the hair in and out, and I pull the top of the teeth away from the head. What I'm doing is I'm using my pinky finger to stabilize my hand against his head, and that just helps me stabilize the hand so that if there are any sudden head movements, I don't have to worry about my hand slipping. So you can see I've cleaned up that area, and it didn't take too long, and that's the reason why I love the clipper over comb. You can take small amounts of hair in a very efficient way, and it's speedy. So now we're attaching the one guard, and I'm going to do a soft taper around the bottom of his hairline just to clean up that long hair. I like to do a natural hairline fade, and that way I find that the hair grows quite nice and it grows out. The grow out is longer as well. So you can see that I'm shaving down the neck because he has a hair growth pattern where the hair kind of grows up to the sky. So I want to make sure it's nice and close. That's why I'm going in the opposite direction of the hair growth, so that I can ensure that the guard picks up all the long hairs and I don't leave any patches. If you see any dark patches in your haircut, in your clipper cut, that means that there's extra length, and that just means you have to go over it a little bit and blend that out. So always just take your time when you're blending out those dark patches. If you have to just press lightly and go over it and feather your hand over it, as I've done it right behind the ear, that is a very effective way to just make sure you're getting a tiny little bit of hair off and you're not cutting too high into that previously faded hair. If you remember, I used a 2 guard at the beginning, so we're fading his hair from a 1 guard length into a 2 guard into the roundness of the head, which will be quite a bit longer. And I just go up behind the ear. I'm a little bit particular around the ears and thorough. There tends to be some missed hair, and I can be a little bit of a perfectionist, so it's okay to go over it a little longer, as long as you just be aware of any sudden head movements while you're clipping around the ears. But my guy seems to be doing pretty good so far, and a lot of the times behind the ear I'll just pull the skin and create some tension there so I can get those final little hairs, and you can see how nice and clean that's looking. So we're feeling pretty good. I'm feeling pretty good so far about the fade, but you can see there's still a little bit of a line that I want to blend out. So now I'm doing the same comb, but I'm going to be more precise and do my scissor over comb technique, which allows me to be a little more precise with my cutting. And for me, it's one of my preferred methods to blend the sides, and I do this a lot, and so I make the process look quite easy when I do it, but I have been practicing quite a bit. And so with this technique, it takes some practice and some dexterity, but if you just keep plugging away at it, you will definitely get it. Use the comb and the scissors as one tool. So I've pressed my scissors in my hand against the comb, and then I keep my wrist on my left hand that's holding the comb nice and stable. So I'm getting a nice clean cut with all the hairs that are coming through the edge of the comb. And you can see that once choppy edge that I was having at the crown, I've just slowly blended out, but I've maintained as much length as possible. And that is one of the ways that you achieve that with the clipper over comb technique as before, and then now doing more precise with the scissor over comb technique. We're still using the same width of comb, the 2 guard, but when I do the scissor over comb, it is definitely a lot more precise for me personally. And again, I've said this in my previous lessons, I tend to be a bit of a perfectionist. A lot of these extra steps I take just so the haircut looks awesome, but that's a creative choice that you make as the person who's doing the haircut, which is kind of fun, but also a little scary. So I like to show you all the steps just so that you can always have a lot of ammo in your tool belt there that you can use to do an awesome cut for your kids. And I'm just taking a little bit of length off here, blending out those sides. You can see that really nasty choppy edge that looked really scary is now blended quite nicely. And I'm just going over my previous haircut here. I do that a lot. I'm a little bit of a perfectionist, as I said before. So when I do the sides, when I scissor over comb the sides, I hold the comb at a slight angle matching the edge of the hairline. So now we're doing the top, and remember the top is disconnected in the fringe area. So the way we do that is we have to eyeball where we want the fringe to lay, which I'm doing here. And I'm just checking how much of an overhang he has. And you take a pie-shaped section coming from the crown. And the reason why I'm only sectioning it slightly is because I'm just taking off a tiny corner and just blending out any heavy weight in the hair that's coming from the side. So when you pull the hair off to the side like that, as I'm showing, you'll see just a tiny few pieces that stick out. He didn't have a lot of hair that was disconnected from the top, but when you're blending that heavy side piece from the back into the fringe here, you just take a pie-shaped section coming from the crown. And now I do the same thing on the opposite side, where I just pull the hair over and trim off any sort of long pieces. I'm basically creating a nice, straight, kind of disconnected side with his hair. And then as I push it over in the opposite direction, we get a nice side sweep. So for the top, we blend in that crown. And you can see there's just some corners I need to take off. Nothing major because his hair was already on the shorter side. If it was longer, you'd see more corners, you'd have to take more weight off, but you eyeball it based on how long you want to leave the top because it is disconnected. And what I'm going to do now is I'm going to flat wrap his hair. So I'm using first I started using a wider toothbrush, but I've decided to use the boar hair brush, which is a non-vegan brush utilizing boar hair to smooth and create tension while you blow dry, which I love, especially around the crown here. And I'm doing the flat wrap technique. While I do his blow dry, that's going to smooth out that lumpy crown area, and it's like a back and forth. And this is why I use the boar brush, because it really gets in there and creates that tension that you need to smooth the hair out. His hair is a little thick, so the boar hair brush it's going to take me a little longer as I do it. So I'm going to switch back to a wider toothbrush just for a little bit, and then I'm going to use my hand once the hair is about 80% dry. This initial dry with the flat wrapping technique is just smoothing those edges that I want to lay forward. What we're doing now is we're just checking to see how much disconnection we have. Now, if your haircut was left longer on top, the fringe would definitely come down around the face and you would see that disconnection more in the sides. And if you remember to take the pie-shaped sections coming from the crown, you'll be able to blend any heaviness that you see. And it's difficult to show that in this particular haircut, but if you had a longer haircut, you would understand. So I've created my Facebook group, private Facebook group, where you can ask me questions anytime, and that's where I'm available to discuss these ideas. And you can go over any trouble you're having in any of the haircuts, and I can give you tips and tricks on what to do and how to change that up. So right now I'm just using my hands and I'm just pulling on his hair. I like that back and forth motion. I'm just getting everything pulled forward so that we can accentuate that side fringe he's got and that side parting, because he has quite nice hair and he's a lucky kid. So again, I'm just blow drying his hair forward and just checking to see if I like how long it is, if I like where the weight is, because after it dries, that's when I'm going to do my detailing, where I do any artichoking, which is a thinning technique, any point cutting. You can see he's got some corners there sticking up at the crown, so I'm going to blend those out with point cutting as well. But all in all, the shape of the haircut is looking quite nice, and these are details that you can do, but they're not necessary. The bulk and the main part of the haircut has been done, which is the sides and that blending of the crown into the front for that disconnection, but we're just detailing it, making it look professional, and that's why I'm showing you all these professional techniques. And what we're going to do now is just use horizontal sections. I've added some hairspray in there. We're just going to check his cut here, and so far it looks good. There's no need to blend any of the crown out or any of the point cutting on top. He's laying quite nice here on top. And I'm just using some wet texturizing hairspray. He's loving the smell. It's I like a liquid hairspray. It creates a nice texture in the hair without adding grease. And there you have it. There's our finished disconnected top haircut with a 2-guard into a 1-guard fade. And then you can see the bangs are nice and disconnected there, and he can grow his hair out a little bit longer in the front now, which we're going to do. So thank you so much for watching. Remember to connect with me on the private Facebook group all. Thank you so much.